All right, so we just heard from three excellent speakers, and I just want to kind of listen to these three. I think, some of the common things that stood out were that continuous improvement, going into the barn, looking, measuring on a daily, weekly, whatever it is, but getting back in there and really taking the time to figure out what's going on and not just letting it go. And I think the other key thing that kept coming up was training. There's the constant training, education, ensuring that the employees are understanding what's going on, understanding why, and then taking that knowledge and putting it back into the field. So I think that's kind of some of the key things I took away from that, and I just think is so important when we talk about ventilation, that those kind of two things get done. So kind of with that, I'll open the floor to questions, and if you don't have questions, I've got some hard ones for them, so don't worry. So I guess there's mics on the table, I think, for that.
There are mics on the table, and you guys have to push the button on them to make them live, I think.
So, questions? Chris? Then it.
Where is it? Ready?
What do you do to prevent pit fans from going back into the soffits to just recirculate the dirty air?
It's a good question. I personally don't have a solution for that one. What we do have is that our soffits are on the south side and or east side are open, and we're calculating for every 400 CFM that we want to draw in, we're using a square foot of soffit opening. And then we want a third of that to be on the north side so we don't get a pressurized attic. Pit fan specifically from getting up in the attic, I don't have a good solution for how to get that done. We're using, like Fernando and Doug, we're also using a constant low speed at minimum. We're not doing a time on, time off. I have seen rust on the eaves and the edges near pit fans. But I don't have a good solution to how do I make sure it doesn't get up in there.
More or less, our indicator is we need a double of the eave space in accord to our inlet opening. No? Most of the time during the winter time, we don't have, or we don't need completely inlet opening, all the square foot that we need available. So in some cases we could close some of the eaves because we will not need them because our inlet is not opening totally. Do you follow me?
I don't have anything. I don't know. I guess we don't haven't really ever looked at that too much, so haven't dealt with it.
The only thing I'd add about pit fans at all is that they're certainly the most overlooked piece of the whole package. They're usually, unless you're diligent, I mean, they've got to be washed at least at the turn. If they're not efficient, they're not going to expel the air. If it's just the end of manure pumping season and the covers aren't on right, you're going to create unwanted inlets, like Fernando was talking about infiltration. That's going to hurt how the whole system's working, and if you can get them to, the cones have to be in place. Obviously, they have got to be sealed to their housing correctly so that they're expelling the unwanted air out in the atmosphere, and on they go. Design of that hood is going to be part of it too. How far away are you from the eave edge? If I can add anything else for you.
Amos?
Oh, Amos.
Saw your hand up, so.
I was just curious about what the panel thought about positive pressure ventilation systems, and if there was any movement toward that in your organizations.
I am not seeing too much wind to finish building in positive. It's more in the south unit. No, some GDUs are used in the positive system, ventilate, but no in wind to finish area until now. No.
Questions? Anyone else? Yep. Oh, behind you.
So we go back to stage 1, stage 2 ventilation, stage 1 being minimum. What's your thoughts as far as placing those fans on walls versus on the pit covers? Because we're dealing strictly off static pressure, so I'm just curious to see your thoughts around that.
We actually did some new builds here last summer with some wind to finish barns that we did move the fans into the walls as our first go around at this. We've been operating them now for a few months, and so far I really can't see a whole lot of difference as far as how the barn's working. One big advantage I can see will be simple is it's going to be easier to keep them clean. Because as you all know, it's a pain in the butt to wash a pit fan, and you don't get very many guys to buy into that fact. They won't go out and with the hose and wash that fan. But if it's on that wall, well, then it's pretty easy to clean it up. So they'll get cleaned a lot better, that's for sure. But right now, I can't see any difference on how the barn's performing.
In some cases, when you are using wall fans, we can see a little more wet slat. Because when you have the pit fans, the air is crossing to the slat, through the slat, but when you have the wall fans, not. But that is not happening in wind to finish barn. It's happening more when you have farrowing houses, group housing in that area. When you have walls, in that case, you have that kind of the challenge. No?
And for my part, the number one thing in any of these power barns is the unintended inlets. No matter what system you have, if you've got a bunch of unintended inlets, it's not going to do for you what you wanted. I mean, theoretically, there's no difference in static pressure between above the slats and below the slats. Fan just wants to pump air, but you've got to have stuff sealed up. That's my biggest worry. Especially in the winter, especially wind to finish. Got to plug up those spots that you don't want air to come through.
And other point is about the distance. Usually the pit fans has a radius more or less 50, 40 feet around. But in the case of the wall fans, you need to consider the distance between your wall fans versus your last inlet. Maybe that distance is close to the 75, 100 feet. So the radius of the fans is different in wall fans versus pit fans.
So just to throw one comment that I've seen in the past is when we go to the wall versus the pit fans, the transit opening has changed. So many times we're shortening up underneath that pit fan with not enough transit opening, which compromises that fan dramatically. If we go to the wall, then that takes that completely out of the equation, right? So.
Yeah, this fall with the challenge to nutrient application, we had a really good lesson in that this fall.
Let's get a little clogged up.
Question was, do we have sick pigs? And I had barns where we had to do some radical modification of our ventilation to avoid sick pigs. I saw my humidity go up in a barn or two. It was just a matter of, can my manure applicator get to the particular spot in a timely fashion? And as the gentleman pointed out, in most barns that have a deep pit, as the manure rises, the transition into the pit fan area is modified and can choke the fan off to the point of uselessness.
Well, any other questions? I think we're on Eastern time here, but right? Yeah. I think if there's anyone else, just because we're the last session, so say thank you all for sticking around, and if you have individual questions, you can probably speak with them afterwards or shoot them an email. So.
And if you could please fill out the seminar evaluations on your tables, it helps us pick content for next year. Let's give everybody a round of applause.